The SADC Ministerial Committee of the Organ on Politics, Defence and Security Cooperation has been convened in Pretoria today. Top of the agenda, as we just told you, is the insurgency in Mozambique as well as the political tensions in eSwatini. The sitting is also looking at the progress made in fighting violence in Mozambique's Cabo Delgado province. For more reaction on this, let's speak now to Liesl Louw-Vaudran from the Institute for Security Studies, who joins me now for that conversation. Liesl, I think let's start with your broad perspective of, this particular meeting. How important is it on the two key issues around Mozambique and eSwatini, given that it was initially scheduled to be followed by a summit-level kind of meeting, but that's fallen off for now. It's been postponed for now, but the ministers are forging ahead, working against the clock, of course, knowing that the mandate of the SADC troops in Mozambique comes to an end on the 15th of April.
Good evening to Liesl. Yes, thank you for having me. It is an important meeting, and as you say, it should have been followed by the heads of state then. But the meeting is going ahead because every 3 months, really, SADC reviews the mandate of SAMIM. And so now it will again be extended until the 15th of July, if we understand correctly. This is the fourth time now the mandate has been extended. Usually for this kind of deployments, multilateral deployments, it's every 6 months. The African Union, for example, reviews its deployments across the continent. But I think also because of funding constraints and so on, the SAMIM mission is every 3 months that it's being reviewed. So it is important. And the minister also announced just in our opening remarks that the European Union has given some funding. We understand it's about 2 million euros, so it's not an enormous amount, but it will at least help SAMIM a little bit along the way for its further deployment.
Liesl, usually these kind of cooperative and collaborative processes on our continent are sometimes, hampered by pledges being made but not being followed through by implementation. I see that in her opening remarks, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Naledi Pandor, is sort of saying that that's happening to a large extent, that that's being followed through, but subtly hinting that it's not to the extent that it should be, in terms of, countries saying we will contribute this many troops and this kind of military equipment and then following through on that.
Yes, SADC has 16 member states. So we were actually expecting that countries like Angola, for example, would have a larger presence in the SAMIM force, which hasn't been the case. Also, countries like Zimbabwe initially announced some contributions. Now, we know most countries in the region have got funding constraints, and in terms of their military, at the moment, it's basically South Africa has about now, with having been upscaled in the last few weeks, actually, 1,000, just close to 1,300 troops. Then there are Tanzanian troops from Botswana and Lesotho. And even in January, when the SADC summit was held in Malawi, there was, again, an appeal for countries. There was talk of Zambia also, contributing more to the force. Countries are paying because actually up to now, SAMIM has been self-financed by SADC member states. So some member states are not sending troops, they are actually sending financing, which is quite rare on the African continent. I must say most of the multilateral deployments are usually funded by, outside sources, the EU, etc.
So before I shift focus to the situation in eSwatini, let me let me ask the question in this way then. If the question is to extend or not to extend, what would you say, given, based on the reading of where we are now and where we were at that point when the insurgency was pretty much overrunning, parts of Cabo Delgado?
Yes, certainly gains have been made. Remember, there are also the Rwandans. There's about 2,000 Rwandan troops on the coast, Palma, the Mosambwa de Praia harbour town, the whole Afungi Peninsula where the liquid natural gas projects are. That area has been pretty safe for the last couple of weeks, although, you know, it would be wrong to create the impression that actually all of Cabo Delgado is safe for people to return. They're almost weekly or twice weekly, there are attacks. There was a big attack just now, a few weeks, I think about 2 weeks ago, not even, on an island off the coast of Cabo Delgado where there were about 20 casualties. Some of them, so it was SAMIM and the Mozambican forces that fought off these insurgents who came to the island. There were heavy fighting for several days. So, you know, it's definitely not as if Cabo Delgado is now completely pacified, but key routes have been opened up. In some instances, people have been able to return, although in a very limited way. And at this point, SAMIM has the most difficult task because it's basically based in 3 districts, more, or the one, Makomia on the coast, but others near the Tanzanian border and more inland. So it's a vast area together with the Mozambican military to patrol. And, you know, unfortunately, we've seen with these violent extremist groups, terror groups around the continent, that it is very unpredictable and that they can, you know, upscale. We see Al-Shabaab in Somalia even now growing in size after all these years and all these military deployments. So I think there's no question that SAMIM's mandate will be extended, that's for sure.
Lastly, Liesl, then the situation in eSwatini, because you know that could be slightly different from the Mozambican situation in that it's not a military operation, but as the naming of this troika aptly points out, political situations often feed into stability and security questions. You were talking about progress on the Mozambican front. Is there progress on the eSwatini front? Certainly around the National Dialogue Forum that was said to be supposedly getting underway a few months ago at the behest of SADC. It seems to me that that doesn't seem to be moving forward. And the key question is, what format should it take? The Sibaya approach, traditional approach that's enshrined in the eSwatini constitution, versus a bigger role for SADC in terms of shaping the format of engagement between King Mswati and citizens of the kingdom?
Yes, you're absolutely right. There hasn't been progress. SADC definitely needs to step in. A mediator needs to be appointed, perhaps not from South Africa necessarily. South Africa is chairing the organ on politics, defense and security only until August this year. But it was an opportunity for President Cyril Ramaphosa last year to intervene, you know, send a delegation, Jeff Radebe and others, to eSwatini. And it was announced that SADC would assist with a national dialogue that is not the Sibaya, because, as you know, the opposition rejects that format, which is really just, as they say, the king coming to lecture to people. And it's not acceptable to the forces, the democratic forces in eSwatini. So here's really an opportunity for SADC. It's not going to cost anything. It's not a multinational force that is, you know, millions of dollars. It's a role in terms of diplomacy, mediation, and I think everyone in eSwatini is really waiting for you know, a greater role for SADC there.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights. That's Liesl Louw-Vaudran from the Institute for Security Studies, unpacking that meeting of ministers of the SADC organ on politics, defense and security cooperation that's underway in Pretoria.